Hello and welcome back to another GridDB video. In this one we're going to show you how to use GridDB in your browser. We accomplished this through Jupyter Notebook. Sorry about that. So what this is I'll just bring up the web page here. It basically allows you to use Python within your browser. So it's not only for Python, you can also use R and stuff like that, but basically the idea is you can run code directly from your browser, and the visualizations that it produces will also be displayed in your browser. And this really helps because it allows you to you can write your program in there in the browser, and it has a kind of a special interface to it, more GUI like. Some people prefer that, especially if they're not programmers by trade, maybe more data scientist side. And also it makes portable files. So if I were to produce some kind of file and it has a bunch of visualizations within it, I can take that whole file, give it to my colleague or something, or a journalist. I guess there's a journalism word here. And then it'll actually run the code for them in the browser, and it'll show all the visualizations for them directly in their environment without having to mess with a bunch of stuff. So all around, very useful tool, especially for data science, scientific computing, computational journalism, machine learning, stuff like that. And so obviously pairing GridDB with this sort of workflow is really valuable, because GridDB is kind of made for this sort of thing, having these large data sets that need to be analyzed quickly. So the way we can get GridDB to work with Jupyter in the browser is through our old pal JDBC. So if we have JDBC installed on our machine, we can get it working. So let's just get started here. I have this command that I pre-wrote because I don't want to mess it up. But basically, if you're starting from scratch, you can go ahead and you have to actually, no, scratch it. I was going to say you have to have the Python client working, but you actually don't, since we're using JDBC. So basically, you just need to install the Jupyter Notebook itself, GridDB API, which is the JDBC connector for Python. This guy's a helper of the JDBC connector. And then I also need to set up tools and IPY kernel. Otherwise, I was not getting my kernel working in my Jupyter, and it was kind of messy. But anyway, so let's run this. It shouldn't do anything because everything's already installed. All right. And I think that is basically it. So once this is already there, let's start it. So we just type in Jupyter Notebook, and it should run. And I was using WSL earlier, and it wasn't kind of working for me. This would say not found. If you do get that error, you need to add your home.local bin in your path. So this is where the Jupyter Notebook stuff gets saved. It should be in your path already, but if it for some reason isn't, or like on WSL, you can go ahead and copy that. Okay. Basically here it just says to go to this URL, and it should work. Okay, so let's try it. All right, there we go. So this is what Jupyter looks like. This is the directory for home. So let's make a new directory. Where is a new directory? This is alphabetical order, right? Untitled folder. I was looking for new folder. Okay, so then here you can rename this, let's say. Name, last modified, upload, file size. Okay, I can't rename it from here, so I'm not going to bother. But let's say we want to connect to our GridDB server and print some data or something. We can go here and do new Python. And here you can see it goes line by line. So you can do like import GridDB Python or something like that, right? I already have it copied here. I already have it pasted here, so I will copy it. So I'm not doing anything, basically anything. I'm just doing the bare minimum here to show you that you can make a connection to your GridDB server via your web browser. I'm obviously in Firefox right now. So first we need to import JDB API. And from there we use that to make a connection. And then you can see here what kind of connection string it requires to connect to our running server. So you need to point to the SQL driver So it'll be exactly this. So you can copy and paste this. And then you need to enter your JDBC connection string. So for me, since I'm running this in fixed list mode and my cluster name is my cluster, you basically just enter these same credentials like this. So usually the notification number is like this, 10001, but the SQL port is 2001. And then you put in your username and password, and then you point it to that grid store JDBC jar file. So that's a prereq I forgot to mention. So you do need to have this somewhere in your computer. Ideally, you want it here in user share Java because that's where generally it goes, but you can have it wherever you want. And just make sure that your connection can find that file and it has the right permissions to, it has the correct permissions to read it. All right. And then from there, we just take this connection and we make this variable called cursor. And then we just make whatever SQL string we want. And then you execute that and you fetch all, and then you print the data. I mean, that's really, I'm not doing anything fancy. So you can actually run it from within the browser like I was describing, which makes things really nice. And you can even get the results here in your browser. So yep, we have 2 rows returned from this query. And yeah, super easy, super helpful. If you're actually going to use Matplot and actually plot some data, even better. But I didn't think it was quite that necessary to go that far. Basically just show you how to set up Jupyter and how to connect to your GridDB server. And that wraps it up. Thank you for watching. Hello. Actually, before we wrap it up, let's actually try another example. So I mentioned earlier you can only run with JDBC, but that's actually incorrect. So you can actually also run the NoSQL way. So JDBC would be, SQL, and the NoSQL way of running TQL in the your program in your Python script, or just using the API like put or get or query, actually will run in Jupyter. So let's show an example of that, and then we'll wrap up. So let's make a new Python 3 file. And I have this already here, ready to go. This is from an earlier video where we were doing the Python API. So this is just going to show reading data from GridDB. So I'm also going to be querying device 4 here. So I'm just going to copy and paste this. Maybe I should zoom out just slightly so you can see everything maybe. But not that important. So essentially you can see here, if you went through the API portion of this course, you can already see what this does. But essentially I want to query device 4 again, but instead of using JDBC to make that connection, I just want to use the GridDB connector. So here we're going to grab device 1 so we can connect to GridDB. And then I want to go ahead and get container for device 4, same like I did in the SQL side, but instead I'm going to be reading the data, and then I'm going to query device 4 using the TQL select all columns using, this is TQL, not SQL, because we're using the API. And then we're going to print the results, and then we're going to use, we're actually going to use a data frame and TQL. So we're going to be running the query limit 10. So yeah, we ran this all through this already again before, but this time we're going to run in Jupyter. So you can see that any sort of Python script you want to run, you can also do through Jupyter if that's what you prefer. Some people, like I said, prefer the GUI. So let's run this. And you can see here, successfully connected to GridDB, and we selected all from device 4. And you can see the results here, and then we select from device 1. But since device 1 has, hundreds of or tens of thousands of rows, we limit to 10. And yeah, that wraps it up. I just wanted to showcase that you don't just have to stick with SQL and JDBC. You can also use the native TQL and the API and the GridDB Python connector. All right, thanks for watching again.